On Tuesday, the Office for National Statistics, or ONS, released the latest round of employment data. And, as per usual, it didn't make for happy reading. According to that data, in the 3 months to December, the headline unemployment rate hit 5.2%, up from 5.1% a month earlier, and the highest figure since February 2016 if you exclude the pandemic. To make matters worse, annual wage growth in the private sector came in at 3.4%, down from 3.6% a month earlier, and on a par with the UK's inflation rate in December, implying that the average private sector worker is experiencing essentially zero real wage growth. If this wasn't bad enough, when you dig into the data, it quickly becomes clear that the job market is especially brutal for young people at the moment. The unemployment rate for 16 to 24-year-olds, for instance, ticked up to 16.1% in December, more than triple the headline figure, and implying that the UK now has a higher youth unemployment rate than the EU, for, well, basically the first time ever. Things are even more brutal for young men. The unemployment rate for 16 to 24-year-old men specifically hit an astonishing 17% in December, literally higher than at any point since 2011, when the UK economy was emerging from the rubble of 2008. We're not even excluding COVID here. Yeah, young men were apparently more employable during the pandemic, when the economy was literally put on ice, than they are today. So in light of this slightly astonishing data, we thought we'd do our best to figure out why youth unemployment is surging in the UK, and what might be done to fix it. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. Broadly speaking, we can see two big reasons for this. The first is, obviously, AI. Since the release of ChatGPT in 2022, there's been a fair bit of debate about the impact that AI might have on the job market. Optimists insist that, like previous technologies, AI might make some people redundant, but new jobs would quickly appear, and the related productivity gains would make it all worth it in the end. Skeptics, on the other hand, worry that AI will automate away white-collar jobs without really creating any new jobs on the other side, or at least not any new good jobs. While it's too early for a definitive answer, the most recent data suggests that the skeptics are onto something, and AI does seem to be having a net negative impact on the jobs market, at least at the moment. A paper from King's College London published late last year, for instance, found that UK firms whose workforces were exposed to AI capabilities reduced total employment by 4.5% on average, with the effect concentrated almost entirely in junior positions, which are exactly the sort of jobs that young people would otherwise be going into. Similarly, this would also at least partly explain why vacancies for graduates have cratered since 2022. Entry-level grad jobs are arguably the most exposed to being replaced by AI, and the steep decline in vacancies and the relative decline in salaries suggests that that's exactly what's happening. Again, it's too early to say what the impact of AI will be on the job market or the wider economy in the long run. It's at least possible that this is a temporary displacement, and AI will eventually create new opportunities down the line, but this won't come as much consolation to young people looking for jobs right now. However, AI alone doesn't explain why the UK has seen a steeper increase in youth unemployment than basically every other developed economy. As we mentioned in the intro, the UK's youth unemployment rate is now above that of the EU for the first time ever. And things look particularly dire if you compare the UK with its pre-pandemic baseline. Since 2019, youth unemployment in the UK has risen by 45%, compared to a 13% decline in the euro area. The only other big European economy to see an increase in youth unemployment during this time is Germany. But Germany has seen basically zero economic growth since 2019, and actually negative growth on a per capita basis. And even then, the UK's relative increase in youth unemployment has been more than 3 times greater. If AI really was the sole driving force behind this recent rise in youth unemployment, you'd expect to see similar trends in other countries. But the UK is apparently now an international outlier. Now, the UK's particularly steep increase in youth unemployment might be in part because the UK economy is more reliant than others on professional services like law and consulting, which might plausibly be more exposed to AI. But while this might explain some of the divergence between the UK and, say, Germany or the Eurozone, it doesn't really explain the UK's divergence between France, which is similarly reliant on professional services but has seen a fall in youth unemployment recently, or the US, which is arguably even more exposed to AI, given its large professional services and tech sectors, but has only seen a slight increase in youth unemployment. So what else might explain the UK's particularly dire predicament? Well, it probably has something to do with the ongoing rise in the UK's minimum wage. This trend precedes the current government, but it has accelerated recently as a consequence of the government's ambition to bring the minimum wage up to 2/3 of the median wage. This means that, according to OECD data, the UK has gone from having a minimum to median wage ratio roughly on par with the OECD average to the highest in the developed world, apart from New Zealand. Now, to be clear, we're not saying that raising the minimum wage is necessarily or generally a bad policy. The UK's minimum wage is now really quite high by international standards, and this, combined with the recent increase in employers' national insurance, which made it more expensive to hire, might plausibly be pricing out younger workers, who would otherwise be going into relatively low-paid, entry-level jobs. This is an especially acute problem in the UK's poorer regions, like Northern Ireland, Wales and Yorkshire, where the new minimum wage represents at least 75% of the regional median wage, which will probably discourage some hiring. And as a final thing, the recent rise in youth unemployment is bad news in and of itself. Unemployment obviously isn't fun, but it's particularly bad news when there's a whole load of economic literature suggesting that unemployment early in your career can cause what's known as vocational scarring. In other words, it permanently damages your future employment prospects and earnings. A seminal paper from 2004, for instance, found that a single year of youth unemployment in the UK reduced wages by around 8%, even 20 years later. It's thus imperative that the government gets around to addressing this problem sharpish, or at the very least, avoids policies that might exacerbate it. Clearly, the current state of the world is plagued by uncertainty and risk. And just while you've been watching this video, your personal information may have been sold or published online without you even knowing about it. And you might just think, well, what's the harm in a few spam calls? But unfortunately, it's not that simple. It might be scary, but scams and identity theft both start with your personal data being exposed online. So that's why we turn to Incogni. Incogni expertly tracks down and removes your data from multiple sites so that your personal information can't be bought or sold by bad actors online. No longer will your data pop up on online directories, people's search sites, or commercial databases for everyone to see and abuse. They work on your behalf to request your personal data removal, and even conduct repeated removal requests so that you can remain in control. You can even send Incogni sites that expose your data, and they'll send removal requests on your behalf, or assist in you opting out on your own with their custom removals feature. And it's even impacting parts of your life that you never thought about. For example, your health insurance could actually raise your rates just based on your online activity, particularly the data that you enter into health apps. Insurance companies can easily buy that data and decide for themselves just how healthy you are, without you even getting a say. From your phone number to your political affiliation, Incogni can help you find it all and remove it from the internet for good, keeping you protected from the threats you might not even be aware of. Because if they can't find you,